one of which is that you have to prove citizenship to be able to register to vote in this country. And the second component is that you actually have to show an ID to vote in this country. We think those are both things that are overwhelmingly popular all across this country, no matter what your political party is. And just to sort of illustrate, I think, how this issue is something that a lot of people resonate with and connect to, is the fact that pretty much everything you do in your daily life involves showing an ID. You know, whether it's opening a bank account, you know, getting a hotel room, picking up prescription drugs. You need a card in many cases just to get into a library. I mean, these are things that are just basic, fundamental aspects of our everyday life. We certainly ought to be able to apply them to something as important as voting in this country. And if you think about it, even the Democrats who are complaining loudly about this required a photo ID to get into the Democrat National Convention. And there are a number of our colleagues, Democrat colleagues on the other side of the aisle, who require a photo ID just to attend their official events. So these are issues that are overwhelmingly popular with American people, as is the issue of ensuring that biological males cannot compete in women's sports. We think that is also a no-brainer. It defies common sense not to agree with that, but that is an issue also that we intend to have a conversation about on the floor in the next few days, and we'll look forward to putting the Democrats on record and showing just the lack of common sense that they apply to some of these basic issues where the American people agree with us. So it'll be an interesting debate, and we are engaging, starting. We'll get on that bill this afternoon. We'll pick up the message that came over from the House and start that conversation. And I'm looking forward to a vigorous, long, and spirited conversation on the floor of the United States Senate about these important issues. Senator Barrasso.
10 million illegal immigrants flooded into our country while Joe Biden was president and the Democrats were in charge in the United States Senate and House. And now the Democrats want those same illegal immigrants to have an impact on the elections in the United States. I believe only citizens of the United States should be allowed to vote in American elections, and I believe you should have to present a photo identification card in order to vote. It's common sense. You need to present a photo ID to buy a beer, to board a plane, and to do so many other things that are part of American life. Why not to vote? And the great number of American people agree completely with this, that you should have to have a photo ID and be a citizen in order to vote. The Save America Act is the best way to secure and safely provide elections that represent the viewpoints of the American people. And yet the Democrats in this chamber are going to come to the floor, and each and every one of them is going to stand with the far left, the extreme members of their party, who oppose voter identification with a photo ID. We're going to put every one of them on the record so that everyone in America knows that Republicans support voter ID and Democrats are the party of open borders and illegal voters.
Leader Thune? Senator Cameron. I'm sorry. Okay. That's right. Leader Cameron.
Yes, there we go. Well, I'm really gonna start out on a lighter note since it's March Madness. And for the men's and women's basketball teams, exciting. I'm a big basketball fan. But I did want to lord it all over you, and there are probably a few others. But my men's team is number one. That's the Duke Blue Devils. For all you Duke haters out there, just watch. We won with 60% of our team the tournament. I'm a little worried about that. You knew who to root against, I guess, is what. But anyway, I just wanted to add my voice very quickly to the Save America Act. I come from rural America, West Virginia, where we have a great sense of accountability, of fairness, and just common sense. And it's common sense. We already have a voter ID law in the state of West Virginia. It's easy. It's easy to vote early with it. However you wish to vote with your voter ID makes a lot of sense, and it makes sure that whoever's presenting presenting the ballot is actually that person, and it eliminates the fraud. On the non-citizens voting or illegals voting, to me, that is, if it's a 90%, it should be 100%. Voters, the precious right to vote in this country is something that's earned as an American citizen. Sometimes it's earned at birth, and other times it's through naturalization. And so I think that we ought to respect that, and the common sense tells me that a proof of citizenship does just that. So I look forward to the debate today and through the rest of the week and however long it takes, because this is an important issue to the American people because of that fundamental right to vote that we all share.
Good afternoon. At some point, I'm told you are going to move to end debate on this. That needs 60 votes. You don't have 60 votes. Why go through this? Is this basically just a show?
Well, I mean, we don't know that we don't have 60 votes yet. You're making an assumption.
Multiple members of your conference say that there aren't even 51 votes.
Yeah, well, you're making an assumption that at the end of this debate that none of the Democrats will be won over. And I'm not saying that I appreciate your skepticism, but I think it's an important debate to have because it is an issue that is at the very core of elections in this country. And I think this is something that the American people care about, something that we've obviously heard a lot about from constituents across this country, and I think it's an important debate to have. So how it ends remains to be seen. There will be a point at which it will end, and there will be a series of votes that come with that. And but at the end of the day, I just don't know how you defend a position that you need to be a citizen in this country, not only to register to vote, but also to be able to show an ID when you vote. And we'll see how long the Democrats want to defend that position, and maybe none of them will be won over at the end. That's entirely possible. But I think the having the fight, having the debate on the floor of the Senate is important.
A number of military analysts have suggested that the only way to open up the Strait of Hormuz would be for American ground troops to get involved in the fight in Iran. If it requires that step, should the president come to Congress for authority first? And what is your personal opinion of ground troops being involved in this conflict?
I think right now the president is well within his authority. Even if you accept war's powers as being constitutional, he has 60 days to, and I think they've had a lot of success in achieving their objectives. And I think that you will continue to see those objectives achieved. If you talk to our military leadership, our war planners, I think they're doing a masterful job of taking out most of the Iranian military capabilities, whether nuclear or conventional. The Strait of Hormuz obviously is an issue that we're all paying a lot of attention to. But I feel confident that the administration and those who are leading our military efforts there ultimately will be successful in getting things opened up there.
Do you think ground troops are necessary? Would you support?
I'm not ruling anything in or out. I think that's obviously a decision that ultimately our war planners have to make. But I don't believe, at least from everything I've been told, that that's something that is being contemplated. But Senator Cotton is the chair of our Intelligence Committee, and anything you want to add?
I would just say that it's been an extraordinarily successful campaign over the last couple of weeks. Our military objectives are being accomplished day after day. It's a methodical and deliberate effort because it's a very big country with a lot of weapons. But anyone who says that we're already losing or we're in a quagmire or the president can't succeed because of the threat that Iran poses to the Hormuz right now is akin to saying Eisenhower is losing because he hadn't made it to Berlin within 2 weeks of D-Day. It's going to take some time to achieve those military objectives, but in the end, we will have defanged the Iranian regime. Their missile forces, their drones, their missile launchers, their manufacturing capability will be ended. Their nuclear program will once again be pulverized. And specifically with the threat of Strait of Hormuz, it's understandable that we had to prioritize the long-range weapons first that could strike into Europe, or the Indian Ocean, or our bases, or Israel and Arab nations. It's the weapons that can threaten Hormuz can be fairly crude and rudimentary rockets, for instance. There'll be a time for those, and that time is coming. And like the president said, we shouldn't rule in or out any option, but obviously it was a very carefully planned operation, and I commend the leaders of our military and our operational commanders and the troops who are executing it to a T every single day, reducing Iran's military power to rubble.
But, Senator, can I ask you, you have advocated for this operation to wrap up sooner rather than later. Do you still hold that opinion, and what do you put that into context for us.
I'm not sure I've advocated for it to wrap up on any specific timetable. I've said that based on my conversations with the president and my understanding of Iran's military capabilities, I would expect it to take weeks, not days. And we're only a couple weeks into it. And again, every single day brings hundreds, if not thousands, of strikes into Iran that steadily and methodically degrades their military. And the end state will be a country without the defensive or without the offensive capabilities to continue to terrorize the United States, Israel, our Arab friends, and the civilized world.
Leader, you said that floor time is the coin of the realm.
Right.
How does it help you if you are using up valuable floor time by having an extended debate on this issue, the same act, when you have other consequential legislation to deal with, such as a war supplemental, maybe a farm bill, other things that the country needs to have addressed?
Right. There are other things that we will have to deal with, but we have a window of time here. And obviously we slotted this in after passing the housing bill, which was a big bipartisan win last week, got almost 90 votes in the United States Senate. So there are other issues, as you point out, potentially supplemental. We haven't seen that yet, but there is a farm bill. There's permitting reform. The Senator Capitol will be in the lead on, possibly market structure legislation dealing with digital assets. Could be a farm bill, highway bill. There are a number of things that we can do, and I hope we will be able to do. But we have a unique moment in time here right now to address an issue that there is a great deal of public support around, and I think it's an issue that's really fundamental and important to free and fair elections in this country. And so we're going to have that debate.
Your member, Senator Mike Diaz, suggested that Republicans who don't support a talking filibuster to pass this should be replaced for primary. What's your response to him, and what do you make of his tactics?
Well, again, I'm always I prefer to have our fights with Democrats. I'm always someone who believes that it's far better for us to have a majority in the United States Senate, and to have a majority. There are certain places where you don't, the same Republican in Arkansas, for example, is not going to be the same as a Republican in Maine or someplace in New England. So obviously we're not going to agree on every issue, but I think on the core issues, you kind of come back to the Reagan doctrine. And recognize that somebody is with you 80 or 90% of the time. I think most of our colleagues vote with the president north of 90% of the time are allies. And so we may not agree on everything, but I'm way more in favor of ensuring that we have Republicans holding these seats in the United States Senate than handing them to Democrats. Yep.
Why is the filibuster more important than stopping illegals from voting?
Well, look, I mean, I think that there are many ways in which you can stop illegals from voting. A lot of states have some of those measures already in place. But I do think that the filibuster, or maybe more specifically, the concept that the founders had for the United States Senate was that there would be one body that was majoritarian and one that wasn't. And so they divided power in a way that enabled the United States Senate, in which we have 6-year terms, staggered terms, more of a methodical way about going about solving the country's problems, and generally in ways that ensure that there are bipartisan majorities in which to accomplish that. So, and frankly, I mean, I think I can't speak for all my colleagues, but a lot of our colleagues believe that many of the things that Democrats want to do, and when they tried to nuke the filibuster a couple of years ago, were all things that we don't want to have our fingerprints on. Whether that's adding D.C. and Puerto Rico as states or expanding the Supreme Court. You can go right down the laundry list of nationalizing elections. You can go right down the laundry list of things that I think there are a lot of myself and my colleagues have grave concerns about if the Democrats ever had that power handed to them. So it's throughout history, it's protected Republicans and conservative priorities and principles a lot more often than it's protected Democrats.
So illegals voting and the other things that are in the Save America Act do not approach an existential threat to our democracy. It's just something that can be casually dealt with, not worth bruising the filibuster.
I don't think it's being casually dealt with. We're going to have a spirited debate on the floor here, and as I said earlier, States have the authority to do this already. My state has those requirements in place. So this is a way of ensuring at the federal level that we have a requirement that if you want to vote in this country, you have to register, and you also have to have an ID to vote. But that's something that's done in some fashion in 36 states already. Last question.
For either of you or any of you here, has the White House indicated possible timing of supplemental for Iran? Do you think, because you also did a that?
Right, and I haven't heard with respect to timing or what the components of that might be. I don't know if Senator Cotton has heard anything more specifically on that, but there is an expectation, I think, at some point that there may be a request for some additional resources, to enable them to continue to complete the mission and achieve the objectives that they've set out to achieve with Iran. But we'll be prepared to take that at any time that the administration sends it up. We'll certainly give it due consideration. There are other elements, and perhaps it might come with that, but we're not fully aware of those yet because we haven't seen anything just yet. But we will consider it in due time when it comes. Thank you all.
His motion to proceed. Okay, if MAGA Republicans want to bog down the Senate over a debate on voter suppression, Democrats are ready. We're ready to be here all day, all night, as long as it takes to ensure the powers of voter suppression do not win the day. Let me be very clear, the SAVE Act is not a voter ID bill. It is in every sense a voter suppression bill. It could purge millions of American citizens from the voter rolls through a screening algorithm designed by Elon Musk's Doge Squad. It could disenfranchise over 20 million Americans. It would kill online voter registration. It would kill online vote by mail. It would kill vote by mail. It would kill motor voter registration. What does any of that have to do with election security? It doesn't. It's a naked attempt to rig our elections. The SAVE Act also rejects the most common forms of ID for anyone trying to register. Driver licenses, no longer enough. Not even military IDs would be enough. That is radical. It would force Americans to register only in person, something only 5% of Americans do. And as a result, you could show up at your voting place, the same place you voted 2 years ago, same ID, same everything, and they could say, sorry, you're no longer on the rolls, and then you couldn't vote. It's an outrageous proposition. It also punishes married women who change their last names. The SAVE Act is not about protecting the vote. It's about making it harder to vote and easier to steal an election. And we know what the deal is here. Donald Trump says if Republicans pass the SAVE Act, it guarantees the midterm. The senior senator from Utah says Republicans will lose power, likely for a long time, if they don't get the Save American Act passed. That's the whole game. It's cynical. It's beneath the Senate. It's beneath democracy. Senate Democrats will never let this rotten bill move through this body. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Schumer. I guess I'd ask our Republican colleagues, why aren't they focused on the Save America Money Act right now? Because that's what I'm hearing at home. They cannot believe what's happened with the gas prices. And you look at it, up $30, $40 a barrel. Every $10 increase a barrel is $450 a year for the average American family. You look at what happened with electricity prices, up an average of $110 last year on America's bill. Look at what's happened with groceries. That's what they should be focusing on. And those are their unpopular policies from tariffs on that have gotten us to this point. So what is their answer? Is their answer to stop the tariffs? Is their answer to do something about electricity prices? No, it's the opposite. They're taking energy off the grid. So what are they doing instead? They're trying to take people off the voter rolls and ram through their elections just like that. Trump said it himself. If Republicans pass this bill, the Save America Act, it'll guarantee the midterms. That's not my quote. That's what he said. What does it do? As Senator Schumer just explained, it kicks American citizens off of state voter rolls. Their data is going to be turned over to the Department of Homeland Security, the same agency that brought us ICE, and then driven through some error-ridden Elon Musk Doge algorithm to target voters that are kicked off the rolls, and then they're supposed to give that information back to the state. What else does it do? It creates complicated and costly bureaucratic hurdles for Americans to either register to vote or to re-register if they're like those 69 million women who happened to decide to change their name when they got married. Millions of American citizens don't have the specific documents proving what they're asking them to prove. American citizens. Half of all Americans, 146 million, don't have a passport. Passports cost at least $150. Birth certificates can cost $30 or more and take hours of in-person time to obtain. And in a state like mine, which a bunch of people living in rural Minnesota, in many rural places it takes an average of 4.5 hours round trip to prove citizenship in person. And when it comes to one of those amendments to ban vote by mail, 48 million people voted by mail in 2024. So why don't they face the voters? What are they afraid of? Maybe they should change their policies or change their candidates. But they should not be messing around with America's right to vote. And with that, Alex Padilla, the ranking member of the Senate Rules Committee.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Thank you, Leader Schumer. So here we go. Senate Republicans are continuing their assault on democracy as they are moving the Senate to now take up the so-called Save America Act. I like your name, but I have a different one.
Okay.
This is the Save Republicans from the Wrath of Voters Act, because that's what this is. This is not a voter ID bill, as you will hear them claim. This is not an election integrity bill, as you will hear them claim. Before coming to the Senate, I served as California Secretary of State, so I know a thing or two about how elections work and how secure they are. What this bill is a voter suppression bill. It's a voter purging bill. At a time when prices on everything keep going up, from groceries to housing to child care and energy, gas alone has gone up 25% since Trump's unauthorized war on Iran, and it's still rising. In addition to that, yes, we still have armed, lawless federal agents roaming the streets of communities across the country. And every day that goes by, we are drawn further and further into this quagmire in the Middle East. I point this all out because that's what the American people are saying. They see it on the news, and we hear it from them when we talk to our constituents. American families are paying the price for this failed administration. And Donald Trump and our Republican colleagues know all too well that unless they change the rules for November, they're going to have a poor showing in the midterm elections. That's what this is about. And that's exactly what the bill aims to do. To share voter data with DHS that has nothing to do with administering elections? Their only responsibility is to support cybersecurity of elections, and they're going backwards even on that responsibility. To make it harder for eligible Americans to register to vote, to stay registered to vote, and to cast their ballot? It's un-American, but they see it as their only chance of staying in power after the midterms. You heard the quote from Donald Trump. You've heard the quote from Senator Lee. I'll add to that Secretary Noem, remember her? Secretary Noem's own words when she was in Arizona a couple of weeks ago. They want to pass the SAVE Act so that, quote, they have the right people voting, electing the right leaders. They've been saying the quiet part out loud for a long time now. They're not even trying to hide it. And so we're here to say we will do what it takes to kill this bill. All day, all night, days on end, into the weekend, weeks if they want. We will do what it takes to kill this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, questions? Yes.
Senate Democrats have sent a counter-proposal to the White House on DHS funding. Should we read this as a sign that the two sides are making some progress on getting that agency?
Well, look, we did send those over to the White House last night, and we're trying to move a little bit, but they've got to get serious. They're not getting serious. The key issues of warrants, when you bust in someone's house, the key issue of identity of police and no masks, they haven't budged on those. They got to get serious. Yes.
When it comes specifically to trying to pass the DHS bill, at this point, given the TSA lines, given the difficulty that people are having in the airport, given the missed paychecks, why not just sit in a room together? Why haven't there been paid?
We've been talking to each other. The two sides have been talking to each other day in, day out. And as I said, one of the key issues that we have been having a discussion about are the warrants and the masking. The issue is not the means of communication. The means is the substance of the reality that they won't budge yet on those two issues. We're hoping they will. And as for the TSA lines, very simple. They blocked the bill that we put forward that said fund the TSA, no ands, ifs, or buts. So you ought to ask the Republicans about that.
Senator Schumer, I like your tie.
Thank you. Very nice.
Speaker Johnson said this wasn't green. Does this look green to you?
It's green enough. You know what Tip O'Neill said? The more Irish you are, the less green you wear on St. Patrick's Day.
Well, I'm pretty Irish.
So I am not so Irish.
I want to ask you about the SAVE Act. I know that there are a number of aspects of it which you've outlined that you're unhappy with. But would you be willing to negotiate with Republicans just around something that would require a photo ID for everyone that comes to the ballot?
Look, I'm not going to speculate in details. You know what our objection is. Our objection as Democrats is not to a photo ID. You'd have to define it clearly and properly and easily, but not to a photo ID when you show up to vote. Our objection is it's a voter suppression bill. 20 million, maybe more people, when they show up to vote, will be told, you're off the rolls. That's the problem with the bill. Last one.
In terms of the Democrats' ability to block this in the minority, are you confident Democrats can block the Save America Act? And furthermore, do you regret your decision several years ago during the Biden administration to gut the Senate, attempt to gut?
On the answer to the first one, we are resolute. And our caucus, you should have heard people in there, are firm. This would be a destruction of our democracy, a violation of people's right to vote, the most fundamental and sacred thing we have in America, probably more than anything we've seen in probably a century, and certainly in decades. So we are resolute in doing that. Democrats are always willing to do what we can to move voting rights forward. This moves voting rights way, way back.
Do you regret trying to gut the filibuster?